Community Beacon, Fridays at 6:30 EST, with your hosts Michael Seville and Joel Simmons. A channel whose focus is liberty. A place where the lessons discussed and taught will create openings to a more open and freer mindset. A mindset where you may reach the height of your potential and excel. Here are your hosts, Mike and Joel.
Great day, great. Oh, okay.
Morning. Afternoon, evening, all of the above. What's going on, brother?
Yeah. It's that time somewhere. Good to be here. Appreciate you guys for checking in, everyone, each and every day. This is Community Beacon. It's Friday. That means that it's Friday. Friday, 6:30. We are here every time. Let's get some housekeeping in order. People, remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I think I have a little delay, so bear with me as we go through it. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let's go through some of the orders of some of the things we have going on. Monday nights, guys, remember, every Monday night, 9 o'clock, Motivational Mike Mondays, 8:55. You know, I always pause because I don't know how motivational it is. But we had some really good times. The last couple of shows were in regards to what exactly it's going to take. We go over a little bit of real estate, you know, for each of you that don't know, I am a real estate agent and located here in South Florida. So, you know, check me out if you need any of that information. I appreciate you guys for checking out Monday night, Motivational Mike Monday nights at around 9 o'clock. And then, of course, we have on Wednesdays, it starts with who?
It starts with me. And I'm so glad that you give me the opportunity to talk a little bit about this program. Listen, we've got a great show coming up on this upcoming Wednesday. We have Olivia Cook. She's out of Illinois, and she's wonderful. Young lady, about just under 30, and she's got a great story, a lot of passion. She's going to be ready to come on in there and to really be able to give you all something really strong, really pertinent, really helpful. So listen, just be there, especially I love to invite all the ladies to come and be a part of that show, because I really feel like this young lady has something really good to say for all of the ladies. So especially if you're in between the age of 18 to 30 and above, come on out and gain some of this wisdom. She definitely has been through something and has something to offer. Back in your hands, Mike.
Awesome, brother. And of course, we culminate the week on Friday. Happens to be Good Friday. This Good Friday, at 6:30, Community Beacon. We've been having an awesome time for the last month. We've been discussing some of the things that we would talk to about our younger selves about. And these conversations have been very insightful. Hopefully you all, and I know you guys are playing a part with it as well. Today is an interesting topic. It's the miseducation of Joel and Mike, and we're going to get into some things I think is going to be very insightful and impactful. I know we learned a lot from it, brother. How about you? How excited are you to get into this show?
I'm definitely excited. And I honestly, brother, we went through some of the analytics and we saw that last week's show really hit a lot of people hard. So a lot of people were digging into the show. A lot of you all were watching it through and through, and definitely appreciate it. Y'all continue to like, share, comment, love. Remember to hit that little button down there at the bottom that gives you the reminder. All right. So I'm into it, man. This is impactful because, you know how I am, Mike. I'm thinking about my children always. The way that I grew up really had a strong impact on the way I think about children. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of what I am today is because of how I grew up, and that impacted my thought process on children and how I respond to children and what I would do for my children and how important it is to teach children. And it's just so much because I mean, I don't know. I feel like I gathered a lot of my lessons when I was older. And, not to discredit my mother in any way, shape, or form, because she did a lot, but just being a man, it takes a man to grow a man, just like it takes a woman to grow a woman. I can do all that I possibly can for my girls, but at the end of the day, that mama's got to step up and she's got to be there and she's got to give them that hard stuff that even if a man gives it to them, it doesn't mean that it's going to come across the same way,
Right.
because I think you said it one time before, Mike, you never had no baby, and neither have I. I've never given birth. So
Right.
there's no way that I can figure out exactly what that feels like. Nothing. I've
Yeah.
been there. I've
Yeah.
delivered a child,
Yeah.
but no, I ain't giving one.
Don't know how they do it. Thank God they do it. They're blessed for doing it. And then just like you said, and vice versa in regards to giving that information to a young man. What I always said was, you know what, Malcolm, Denzel Washington played Malcolm X to the T. I mean, they have stories about when he was in that role of playing Malcolm X, and they said that he would oft times when it was unscripted, when the cameras weren't rolling, he was so into that character, like he would just go off into a soliloquy. He would just go off into his own monologue because he's such an actor. He embodied that character, and at the same time, you can't put him next to Malcolm X because Malcolm X is Malcolm X. It's hard to replicate those different experiences. It's hard to replicate that time. You just can't do it, no matter how good you are. And then, not to discredit anyone across the board, but we know that you have to have those experiences, right? So, shouts out to the mothers that were there. Shouts out to the fathers who are there and continue to be there. We're gonna get into a little bit about some traditions, some things that we came up with in life. And I thought, what a great time for us to kind of discuss just some traditions and also ask and really pose this question to you guys because we want this to be as engaging as possible. So while we kind of get into it, please give some thoughts to this question. It's what were some of the ideals that you had as a young person, and I appreciate that, Anna, that you have dispelled as you grew older. What were some of the ideals you had as a young person that you have dispelled as you grew older? Man, I think in the last maybe year, maybe 2 years, and I think we've all had these certain experiences, especially since the pandemic. I think the pandemic really was a time for us to deep dive into some of our thoughts, some of the things that were around us. We're getting so much information. It was a chance to work on your discernment if you needed to work on your discernment, and then even more so to delve into some of the things that were important to you, why they were important to you, where you learned these different things from, so on and so forth. So I think today will be an interesting topic. Today's going to be an extra interesting topic. Let's start something simple. It being Easter, and I thought this was, let's talk about some of the traditions that were passed down or that we kind of celebrate. I think that was one of the things we spoke about in our pre meeting, which is we do pre meetings like every Thursday. Guys, we're working. I just want to let me put it out there. We're working for you guys. Some of the pre meetings, and I asked the brother, I said, well, what were some of the traditions that you had, brother, as you came up during this Easter holiday? You're on mute.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I know that I know we discussed that. And I'm like thinking back now because like when I was a little kid, one of the biggest things for my mother was every Easter you made sure you were in service and you always got a new suit.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, it was a big thing. It was like you got to get your Easter best,
Yeah.
And it's funny now because now, being a preacher, I look at it a little bit differently. I'm not going out and get a new suit on Easter. That's not going to happen. I don't do that anymore. Not to mention I got kids, and it's a little bit different. But when I got myself together somewhere around the age of 19 or 20, I'll never forget one of the first suits I ever wore was the Easter suit that my mother gave me when I was like 16. I had gained no weight whatsoever, nothing.
Good for
I
you.
was the same weight for like 5 or 6 years. I won't even tell you how much that was. I feel like I look really good in the weight that I have right now. But man, I was like this, skin and bones. So for those of y'all out there that know me and still think that I'm like that, let me show you some old pictures. Let me show you some old pictures. But so just like let me kind of set it up for you a little bit, Mike, because when I was 19 or so, I didn't really feel like I had a father figure in my life. Now, there was some people that were impactful for me, but I never really felt like that. I guess, what my son may feel with me, or what my children may feel with me, because I'm just like there constantly. I never felt that constant fatherly love. There was always gaps. So when I got myself together, my mother got remarried and she ended up marrying the pastor. And I was like, this was a great blessing for me because I hold him in high regard.
Yeah,
To
love
this
the brother.
day, in high regard.
Yeah.
What a wonderful man. And I'll never forget it. My mother won't either, because she remembers us walking down the hallway and me with my arms around my pastor and either my assistant pastor, I think it was. And I was like, hey, Mom, these are my cronies now. This one I'm rolling with, And that was like me saying, I changed dancing partners. You know, I'm not riding with the street goers anymore. My cronies, my ride or dies, they're now men of the cloth. You know what I mean? They're preachers, and they're teaching me a whole nother way of living. And so he became a father to me. And even though I was older, it's like he stepped in and knew exactly what to do. So the things that I want to say, they impacted me later in my life, but they really gave my mind something to feed off for these last few couple of decades.
Hmm.
So what he did, Apostle Jenkins, what he did was on on Palm Sunday, every single Palm Sunday, he would strew palm leaves, branches in the center aisle. And that's when you came in, that's what you saw. And it was like, wow, for those of us that didn't understand, Hosanna, Hosanna, glory in the highest, and they laid down palm branches before the Lord's triumphant entry on a donkey into Jerusalem. And that's what it was. And then he taught us that. And so when we look down, we're like, wow. Next thing he did was he put on a major fast. And so we fasted for the entire week. Every morning, sunrise service. Every 12 o'clock noon, the doors were open for midday prayer. And then 8 o'clock prayer at night. And at nighttime, he would teach us what happened to Jesus on that day, all the way up until today, Good Friday.
Hmm.
And he would he would walk the cross in. When Jesus was crucified, he'd walk the cross in. And one year I got a chance to walk the cross in. And we walked the cross in. And when we walked it in, we placed it on the mountain. And then he would drape it with a purple shroud. And when he draped it with a purple shroud, he said, this represents royalty, because they crowned him with a thorn of crowns. And then they parted his vesture and they cast lots for it. And so he explained all of these things to us. And then we had the visual. And then when he died, he removed it and he placed the black shroud up there. And it remained until Easter Sunday. When he rose, he placed the white shroud up there. And it was like, because of this process and because of this death, and now because of this resurrection, we have this right to everlasting life. And that right there, brother, that set the tone for me on who Jesus was and what he had done.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the way that you describe it so vividly in regards to exactly that. I can only imagine how that just from that point on. I mean, even though that was a little bit, you would consider that. I mean, at that time you're a young adult, but the impact that would have on you throughout. I mean, an entire week, and even more so. And I think people, I just don't know how important fasting has become, especially in modern culture, etc., and some of the things that it does in regards to bringing you closer mentally, or what it does for you physically, etc. But it's so, but you having that experience, and let me tell you something. I think I fasted with you one time, and when you say fast, it's not, it wasn't, it's not much, until a certain amount of time, whatever the case may be. And it's not just, some people fast with just water. When you say fast, it's a complete fast. That's normally what you do. And I remember I did it, you and I did it maybe for about 3 days. And the amount of clarity, the amount of emotions, just a lot of things get stirred up during those times. And then after, the amount of clarity that you receive. And I don't think a lot of people have ever experienced anything close to that, which is interesting. Well, because there's also the holy month of Ramadan as well, where you have the Muslims who are fasting from sun up to sundown. And it's a complete fast as well. No water, no food, whatever. And they do it for an entire month. But just the type of experience and the feelings, I can still remember that fast that we had. So for you to have done that for an entire close to a week, close to 6-7 days, right? About 6.5 days. I can't even imagine the feeling that would have. And were you all doing this as a group, or was this something that it was you and just a chosen few, or was it the entire church?
So it was all of us. It was all of us together. And the thing about it is the way that he delivered this message though was the greatest impact. I mean, he's very charismatic and very knowledgeable, very wise. And so the way he delivered it was that this was a personal journey, and I'm telling you, Mike, when he put it on you personally, no matter how many people were in the room, it was like he was talking directly to me only. And so when I went home, I know that there were people that stopped at 12 noon, 3 o'clock,
Right.
6 o'clock, 8 o'clock. But the way he delivered it was almost as if, you go as far as you can go. And me being a young man, it was like, well, I can go a little bit further. I can go a little bit further. And before you know, I went from Monday to Tuesday, Tuesday to Wednesday, Wednesday to Thursday, Thursday to Friday. And every single day I'm like, but then there's something. And then of course there's prayer, a lot of prayer throughout the day, not just when I meet with everyone else, I'm doing prayer also. Every time that I would sit down and eat, I would pray instead, and there's other people that would eat around me, but then also I would turn the TV off. You weren't doing stuff on your cell phone. He would also teach us, if you have any type of call with somebody and they want to argue, then you get out of the argument. Whatever you have to do, if you just say, okay, no problem, you just have your way, or if you even have to hang up the phone and not answer it anymore, or if you have to go mute, whatever you have to do, you don't stir up. You don't get stirred up. You stay away from that. And people will just have to deal with you. And he taught us all those things. And then he coached me and counseled me throughout the day. If something would happen, he was always there. And it was like, do you work at all? But yeah, he does. But it was like, do you work? How are you always there?
All right.
What is going on? And that's what he did. And because of that, I became stronger and stronger and stronger until I recall the last day, 6 o'clock in the morning. I got I got to the house of prayer, and my wife came with me. And I'm telling you, Mike, it was almost like I was being dragged into the door. I'll never forget. I'm telling her, I'm like, listen, I just got to get to the house of prayer. I just got to get to the house of prayer. And she was like, but you can't even hold your legs up underneath yourself. You can't even walk. I'm like, but I got to get there. You're so weak, but I got to get there. I got to get there. And I'll never forget her helping me from the car door to the front door. And when I opened up the door, man, I started speaking, and that sixth sense, the spirit just began to talk inside of me. And all of a sudden, strength came through my entire bones. All my muscles gained strength. And I started to stand up straight. And man, I walked right on down like there was not a thing wrong with me. But just before I got to that door, my wife almost had to carry me herself. It's just like stuff like that I remember. It just says God is real, and this thing really had a sincere impact on me.
And the way the thing is presented. So I'm thinking about his impact in your life. You spoke about the gaps in regards to not necessarily having a father figure, so to speak, in your life, and our stories are similar. My father wasn't around as such, and so when I'm thinking about it, and we're kind of moving on a little bit from the Easter, but it's still in the same vein. Is like getting to the age of 19, just like myself getting to that, becoming a man, so to speak. Like where do you pick up your thought process of what a man looks like? And for me, I definitely, I could honestly say I erred over on the side of being overzealous. You know what I mean? Everything that was possibly a stereotypical masculine man, and I took it all the way to the extreme because what we see now, especially being in our kids' lives, is that being a man is not necessarily being this, this overpowering figure. Like there's no crying. I remember that was one of the things coming up, was like, men don't cry. So I reached to a certain age. I think I got to a certain age, and it was thought of as a weakness, or even just interacting emotionally with other people, hugs, and to this day, people. I'm not a hugging guy. Like I was like people, hey, give me a hug, and it still comes off feeling weird to me because I just erred on the side of not wanting that to happen. Speaking out emotionally. What exactly can I let go without being made to feel as if I'm not that? You know what I mean? So it's so important. I guess so. We're talking about the miseducation of it. Some of the miseducation of it that I learned later, and now my son Elijah probably can't get enough of it because he's a hugging kid. But every now and then I'll tell him, hey, come over here and give me a hug. You know what I mean? That took having to understand myself and saying, hey, this kid, this young man wants to be hugged. You know what I mean? And again, if you see me with Paul, I don't think anybody's ever witnessed that, Mike, with Paul or with Elijah. Like I promise, we're here, we're having a great time. Nobody's ever really seen my dance moves like Paul and Elijah have seen my dance moves.
I want to see these dance moves.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's ever going to see it. Like, no cameras. We're having a good time. We're having our dance contest.
Here's Elijah at. I need his phone number. Call Elijah. Hey, Elijah, videotape your dad and send that to me.
if he could, he would. I'm sure he'll catch me. But it's just little things that, as I grew older, as I had children of my own, understood that, okay, you can't be so staunch, and and that is a tough. That's something that I'm continuously working on. Being more flexible in the way that I come across, right? A lot of people who meet me say, well, you must have been in the military. You know what I mean? Like they say, like, where were you? Are you law enforcement? Are you because of the demeanor? Because and that demeanor came just from years of thinking this is the way that a man should be. So this so it, as we get into this miseducation and the talk and thoughts and the process of this miseducation, for me that's a big prevalent one. What exactly is masculinity? And then on top of that, how do you balance that? Because I can't imagine, I can't imagine the amount of relationships that were probably ruined because they're like, man, this guy just doesn't, like, he doesn't back down. You know what I mean? Like, this guy is not backing down. This guy is just, and they're like, is he, I could almost imagine someone saying, is he like this all the time? And almost, 20 hours out of the 24-hour day period, I'm pretty similar because it had just become that character. So what I learned as I continue as I got older was that you cannot become a caricature of yourself. You know what I mean? Like when you're out in public, oh, turn it on, or even something. It got to the point where I didn't know whether it was being turned on or not, but it was what it was. What about you? Any experiences as such?
Man, I think that you're hitting on it. I feel it. Because we're talking about the miseducation of Mike and Joel, the miseducation of Mike and Joel. And I don't know if you all are picking up on it, but I definitely am, because when you're talking about the overzealousness, then I'm thinking about, man, the over empathic, I was overly empathic, and then you're talking about what you do now, being around those little boys so much and being alone with them, not having certain individuals to come and interact along with you, but you're just, all of that is just on you. And that's very impactful because when you're there alone, you start to see, for any parent that desires to do well by their children, do well by their God with their children, they began to realize some of the things that maybe they can't afford, didn't afford, didn't have, or didn't do. And I think that changes the way that we as parents began to respond to our children, because it's like, oh man, I mean, you mentioned it, Elijah needed that hug. It's like, wow, my first child, I would give her 100 kisses at a time, count them out daily, sometimes 500 daily, because I'll never forget when my mother just sat there and counted out these kisses to prove her love, maybe to herself or maybe to me. And it was something that just kind of moved me. But when it came down time for me, getting to your question, to become a man, it was like, I don't really know what I need to do to become a man. Like, what exactly am I supposed to do? Because my mom showed me that she loves me by kissing me. I'm not going around kissing people. No, that ain't happening. So, so now I need to be masculine. Well,
Yep.
what is being masculine? Because as I was coming up as a child, the only way I knew how to show masculine was with this.
Yeah.
That was it. I'd raise my fist, I raise my voice, I raise my fist, and I fight. And by me fighting, or by me, I had like blackout fights. So I became very dangerous. That was how I showed my masculinity.
Mhm.
But people, my friends, I believe my friends love me because of my empathy. Because it was like, oh, you don't got that? No problem, man. Here, take mine. My last one. Oh, hold on. Here's my shirt. Oh, hold on. Come inside my house. But your mom don't like me. That's all right. She ain't here. Come on inside. Get yourself some water. Let me fix you some leftovers. So it was my empathy that continued to bring my friends to me. But then when it came down to the streets, I literally had to black out, Mike,
Yeah.
before I could show my masculinity, because it just was so, I was like the Samson, you know what I mean? Like I'm just, hey man, just regular old dude. And then as soon as you press my buttons, I'd be like, don't worry about it. Then you press them some more, don't worry about it. Then you press it that last time. And it was like, boy, it's home, man. Ain't nothing but red, buddy. Ain't nothing but red.
That sound like the Hulk? You know, you turned into Bruce Banner and became a
Yeah,
completely different person.
I
And
did.
yeah. So I mean, I think this is interesting. You know, and to have this conversation, guys. Sometimes we just don't know where we're going to head with it, but this is definitely some interesting stuff. I think you were overly empathic, that or having that empathy, and mine was just, it was like I think I'm supposed to do this. One thing about me is like it was just like studying. So when I was out, I was like, okay, so I'm just studying. Like when I get in, I'm just studying the room. Okay, so this is how it goes. This is how it goes. So it was, like I said before, it was more like of this character that I could just turn on. You know, there was like no flexibility in it because I did not know how to maneuver and such because it wasn't shown, right? It just wasn't in the household. It wasn't, this is just exactly what it was. So it was so tough for me to be, you know, to have that, you know, where you to have it, because I just thought that it would be weakness. Um,
I have a
one of the
question for
things,
you.
say it again.
I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
So, what was the relationship between you and mom during that period of time?
Well, mom was overly masculine. You know, mom was attempting to raise a boy and thinking this is what a man needed to be. You know what I mean? So mom was, I mean, we were, I think at that point in time, because at that age, you essentially become the, what they call it, the son husband is what they call it. You know what I mean? Like it's still, because I'm the male in the house, so I have to react in a certain kind of way. Mom was, you know, I wasn't getting those kisses. You know what I mean? My mom was, and you know, for her own thing, she never came up in that as well. She came up in a pretty tough life, you know, coming from Jamaica, where she was from, etc. So I don't even think I remember seeing my mother cry until I was 2021, you know, 2021. And I think that's when my sisters passed, is when that happened, you know, and even then it was like, whoa, it was taking a breath. She still was, you know, strong through it all. I like to say resilient. She was resilient throughout that entire period, but didn't really see it. You know, when I saw a huge change in my mother, because this thought process and these changes can come at any time, right? So just be I think we have a lot of people who are listening to these conversations, and maybe and hopefully you're reflecting and saying, oh wow, I am being a character of myself, or I may be overzealous, or you know, I'm attempting to find this balance. I saw a complete change in my mom when she had her grandkids. When she was around Elijah, and I used to say it too. I used to walk in the room and I used to say, "Who is this lady?" You know, it's like who is this lady? Even when I was, you know, when I would discipline Elijah, and she say, "Hey, you can't do that. You can't do that." I'm like, "Well, this is not, you know, this wasn't half the discipline I was getting. You know what I'm doing, how I'm talking to Elijah, how we're interacting." And she would say, "You can't do that." I'm like, "Well, what? No, come on, you know, come on, Michael, don't, you can't do that." I'm like, who is this person? So I thought it was awesome to see that as she at that age, that you still could all of a sudden become, you know, your best self. Like it's never too late to kind of think about what it was, and oftentimes this comes with experience. But she did change as a grandmother. She became a whole different person, as opposed to when she had to raise me. And I think a lot of that had to do with when she was raising me. There was like there wasn't a balance there, right? Because oftentimes and that's why families are so important, because there tends to be a balance, and you tend to you can get that, and hopefully you're open to your significant other. You will, and to what they have to say, and you can kind of say, okay, well, that gives you pause, which I was getting to as well with you and I's relationship. And I don't know if you remember, but there's times when I came to you frustrated about something, and I would say, because I respect your opinion, or respect and your thoughts on matters, I would say, well, brother, I don't know if you remember this. I say, brother, do you think I'm being overzealous in this case? You understand? I don't know if you remember that. Like, what do you think? Am I being overzealous? You know what I mean? Because it's so very important to have people around you that you can respect their opinion and you know that they're coming to you in love. And they can also, not necessarily, I wouldn't call it correction, but they can also offer up different perspectives.
Admonishment.
Yeah. Admonishment and a different perspective as well. Yeah, but admonishment would definitely be in regards to the correction side of it. But because you need that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, because I get the same thing from you, and we come from two different, it's almost like we have the same type of characteristic played on two different sides of the coin, so to speak, you know. And the thing about it is I'm listening to it because this is 100%, to all the viewers out there, this is what we're talking about, the miseducation. It's not that somebody was attempting to miseducate us. Mm-hmm. It's that we were miseducated by the love that they showed because it was what was needed to get us through the time that we were in. I 100% believe that, because Mike, you wouldn't be the strong character, because you are extremely resilient. And what your mom put inside of you to be the strong individual and to be able to take on heavy labor, heavy weight, and to be able to lift it and not be burdened by it. But even if you are burdened by it, it's like, all right, just got to take a little breather and let's get at it. And that's the type of characteristic that you have, completely resilient, 100% strong. And the thing about it is that she left you with the thought process that you have continued to develop and develop and develop, which gives you the option of gathering all these other senses and all these other emotions and being able to place them in your life and to give that out and to be able to use them as tools inside of you. And I think that that's important because, I see who you are and I know who you were 10 years ago. I remember our meetings. we kind of bumped heads a little bit, but we kept it. I have to give us, I pat you on the back and pat me on the back.
Gotta give the pats.
Because brother, we were on it was North Pole versus South Pole. And I never would have said that I was an alpha male, but I definitely, and you really brought that out in me. In one of these shows, you showed me that there's a lot more alpha in me than I really understood, because I was like, nah, I wouldn't want to be no alpha male. And then you were like, sound like an alpha to me. You remember that?
Yeah. You definitely were pushing. And guys, we're not running around saying we're alpha males, right? That seems to be like one of the hot words and topics or something. But the brother is definitely a leader in what he does, and it changes a lot of things when he comes in the room. And that, that more so than that actual word is probably what I was emphasizing back then.
It was. And myself, I was just like, don't even mention the word alpha. I can't stand the word alpha, It's kind of like I can't stand the word boss, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the same connotation. It all depends on how you depict it. But I just feel like when we met, you were this very strong individual who was 100% sure exactly where you're going. You knew you were going to make a left when you got to the corner, before you got to the corner. You also knew you were going to go straight for 5 miles, make a right. You're going to get on the exit. You're going to travel for another 10 miles. You're going to stop and get yourself something to eat and something to drink. You're going to call up somebody. You're going to hang the phone up. Then you're going to start traveling again. And I was more like, you know what, man, when I get there, I'm going to be able to handle it, Not the same at all.
Yeah. That's interesting that you brought that up. That was to the point I was making earlier. Like I come in and I'm surveying everything, and what I had to learn from you, and I still take this every all the time is like, okay, because it's still in there, right? I've had 30 plus years of conditioning to be the way it is. So the moment, and it's very dangerous, especially as an entrepreneur, especially going into your own business, is that in the early stages, you have to be very flexible on how you do it. And even with kids, let's talk about fatherhood. You have to be flexible, and you have to take things in its entirety and the context, because today may not necessarily be like tomorrow. So I often have to catch my times by hearing something. It happens all the time. Me and the brother have conversations that happen all the time where he says something, I'm just like, nope. Nope, we doing this, and we've been going this way, and then it comes time for reflection. Like, okay, now what I'm starting to learn and understand more is to ask more questions, get clarified, see where the other person is coming from, and then say, okay, well, maybe we can kind of interject it and use it. It's so important for us to be flexible, especially in this day and age. There's so much change. It's happening so fast, so quickly. And you have to be able, and this is just in personal and in business, you have to be able to make the adjustment, because what's going on is people are attempting to put you in this straight corner or this box, and you have to be able to first off justify if you should even, or figure out if you need to be in that box or not, and then if you don't need to be in that box, what are the adjustments that you need to make in order to get to the path that you want to get to, or you would like to get to, or you're called to, rather. So
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. That's awesome. You know, there's a philosophy, I guess, that I believe in. 100% believe in this, and I believe that, because sometimes what miseducation we have is meant to be for our education. God desires us to be exactly who we are, and so the story of David, that's what always comes to my mind. The story of David. Everybody knows about David and Goliath, but not that piece when it comes down to developing a man. Because one of your question to me was like, when do you feel like, you started to make those choices to really become that man, or to choose that masculinity? And yeah, it was right around there, 1920, but it was too late, Mike. It was too late. Being empathic was already in there. The stones were inside of my bag, so to speak. Just like you being a zealous man, the stone was already inside of your bag. And what do I mean by that? In the book of 1 Samuel, right? The 17th chapter, the 38th verse through the 40th verse. And I'm going to give you all the segmented, quick version. But there was a giant, 11, 13-foot man that was just like defrauding the entire army of Israel.
Yeah, and it was every day.
Just calling on them like, who are you guys? A bunch of cowards. You say your God is all this and that. Forget it. Nobody wants to fight me. So he's out there doing it, and it just so happens that David's daddy sends him on down there to take bread to his brothers. And when he gets there, he hears this thing in his ear, and he's like, I can't believe this fool is out here talking like that. I ought to go over there and knock him something good. That's what I should do. And his brothers, they didn't like it. But anyway, somebody went and told the king and was like, listen, we found somebody who said that they want to go out there and fight this giant. And I don't know about you, Mike, but if I was the king and I got, hundreds, thousands of men out here who will not fight no matter what, I'm like, listen, I'll give you my wife. And they're like, I'll give you my daughter, And they're like, nah, that's all right, king. I'm good. I'll give you money, riches. Nah, king, I'm all right. I'm good. And nobody wants to fight. And somebody finally says, you know what? I'll fight them. I don't know about you, bro, but I'll be like, hey, you know what? Let me talk to this guy right here. Maybe he's got something. Got a little left hook, got a right hook, got an uppercut. I don't know. But I want to see what he's got. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they bring David into the king, right? And when they bring David into the king looking at him, he must have did like this, like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Saul was a bit authoritative figure, was an imposing figure.
Right. And he probably looked at David like looking at him like this, like, who's this little guy? Because David wasn't really that tall. They called him Ruddy, a small little ruddy guy. And he started to talk and he's like, listen, let me tell you something, King. I can just imagine it. Let me tell you something, King. You know, I didn't took a bear with my hands. I took a lion with my hand just because they tried to take one of my daddy's sheep. I'll go out there and I'm going to take the head off of that giant. I don't care what nobody say. And he must have convinced them.
Yeah.
This is the part that matters, though, because the rest of it is a great story. People should go read it. But this is the part that matters for you and I and for many others that are going through that phase trying to find their masculinity. You know, David was given the option to wear the king's armor, to be a man that he had never learned how to be. And when he got it on, he was wise enough to know that he didn't know how to use the armor.
Mm-hmm.
So he took it all off. What David did do, and that's the reason why I said zeal must be the rock inside your bag, empathy must be the rock that's inside my bag, is because David went down by the brook and he picked him up 5 smooth stones and he put them inside of his bag. The lesson that I've learned from this, that I found, was that those 5 smooth stones represent the individual that we are, the individual that must be perfected. You can't change that. You can't change it. Once you have that bag, it is what you are made up of. And from this day forward, those same virtues, because now I'm looking at it as a virtue, it's not a hindrance. Being zealous is not a hindrance when used wisely. Being empathic is not a hindrance when used wisely. Even being stubborn is not a hindrance when used wisely. Because David went and he pulled his zeal out of his bag and he put it in a sling and knocked the giant out. I think that that's the power right there.
Yeah. Yeah. You use what you have. I love that. I've never even, I know the story. And in regards to, especially when he refused the armor, it was too big for him anyway. It was going to weigh him down for what it was that he was going out there to go do. But that's interesting. Putting on that or people attempting to put that armor on you when you need to, you when you've done it, because we got to remember as well, nobody had seen David kill the lion and the bear. He was doing that was him by himself. Hey guys, I love the way you put it, brother. Excellent story. I'm gonna tell you real quick what I love. One of the best things, because first off, that's one of my life's dreams, is to do some type of. I don't understand why there aren't more movies made in regards to David, because his entire life can be a 10-part biopic or something. Just everything that he had to go through. You know what I mean? But one of the things that always stuck with me was when he was able to abdicate his throne prior to him passing. A lot of kings, and guys, follow me with this, because I think people have. I was listening to Big Sean. He said people have a lack of understanding about succession. A lot of kings want to wait until they're on the deathbed, or till something happens, and this has to do with a lot of things. But he gave it up so that there wouldn't be a struggle. He let them know who it was, why he was still here. And to me, that was like one of the great. And I think about that all the time. While I am here to allow the younger generation to go ahead and make that move, I think it's very important. I just had to add that part since we're talking about.
That's powerful.
Since we're talking about David, and that's why, and I think that's why we're grooming our kids as such. So we're saying, listen, when what you 131, right?
131.
But right. I can imagine when you're about 80, 90, you kind of just want to go on and let Jonah go on and or whoever to go on and take it over, Sweet Pea, whatever, go on and take it over. Let me enjoy these 40 plus years that hopefully God has bestowed upon you. You know what I mean? Let me live it in this kind of way. I don't necessarily have to strive like you're doing now, because believe you me, the brother is striving and putting in the work. So yeah, so
let me bridge that real quick though.
Yeah.
because I thought that was powerful. Man, I didn't know you were going to go there. But when you say abdicate, you were saying that, I mean, he gave this up in order for his son, for the right one to sit inside of the throne. And I think that that's the exact same message. That's what was inside of the bag. Don't be who you aren't. Be who you are
Yeah.
and let that live, because your mother, she prepped you to be a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
My mom prepped me to be a certain way. There's a place for us on this earth, just how we are. Now it's all about becoming the man that knows how to use those talents, knows how to use that stone, knows how to use it for the better good, for the betterment. It doesn't mean that we need to hold it up and place it in front of everyone as a symbol of authority and power, but it's more about being able to mitigate ourselves and being able to properly and appropriately serve.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
powerful, man. I think you closed the loop with that thing. I mean, you went out to the distant far, even beyond where we are today. Powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Guys, listen, if you're catching this now, write something in the comments. Definitely want to hear from you. In the replay, please let us know how you feel about this conversation. I still want to get to know, whether it's now, whether it's later, that question. What are some of the ideas that you had as a younger person, that maybe environment, maybe parents, etc., that now that you're starting to dispel as you grow older? And just on a lighter note, um, my parents come from a Caribbean background, so there was a lot of work involved. So, which is good. I'm gonna tell you why, because they instilled that in us to where we're not afraid to work. Because there's some people that's scared to work. There's some people that they think an 8 hour day is pushing it. They think an 8 hour day is pushing it. Whereas I'm thinking, you know. I have to tell myself stop sometimes. And I know you're the same way, brother, where you just got to tell yourself, like, listen, I need to take, like, you have to intentionally give yourself some time off, which is good. I'm not telling anyone not to take any time off. However, just getting to the point of, going back to some of the thought process of it was, in order to get, like, your value came with your time. Right? Like your value was based on the time that you gave. So oftentimes, let's call it for what it is. We end up babysitting clocks, and this is not, this is probably prevalent throughout the culture, especially the last, the people that came before me, and probably around my age as well, where your value is based on your time, as opposed to your value being based on results. Right, which once you can switch that mindset and understand that, because even when you're coming up with a lot of results, like you're being very impactful, you have a track record. Let's call it a track record, and you still feel like the work is not done because you didn't put this time in. And when I became an entrepreneur, that was one of the things that I had to understand. Like, if you did what you needed to do. So one of the things that helped me out with that was saying, coming up with goals, figuring out what your goals were. And one of the things I learned, one of the things I still use, and we spoke about this months ago, but it was like, what are the most important three things I need to get done today? And essentially what three things I need to have done by the end of the week. And if I did that, then I can be okay. Right.
DTL. Yep.
Yeah.
Dynamic task list.
Yeah. Exactly. The dynamic task list. I can be okay as long as I get these things done. And for me, it was so very important to have that kind of concept, because as a person who saw their parents, parent overwork. I mean, my mother used to work, man, 2 jobs, 14, 16 hours, every stereotype about a hardworking Jamaican person. That's what she was. Right. So you can easily have most things done, and I'm gonna tell you what, there's always stuff to do. There's never, there can always be you can always have things to do. So to be able to say stop and say, you know what, if you go to bed early, if you go watch this TV, or if you go spend time or whatever it is, not to feel guilty. You don't have to feel guilty. You don't have to be wrestling in your sleep saying, oh well, I could have got this done and I could have got this done. So that one of the myths that I dispelled, and it was very later on in life, was the fact that time does not necessarily need to equal the money or the value that you provide. Is not coming from the time, right? What is time? And that's a whole other different discussion.
I love that one.
We can have that discussion. What about you, brother? What is it? What
Well, I think that I dove into it a little bit from my perspective because I thought that me being empathic was really a hindrance for a long period of time in my life. And I remember when I first got married, my wife would say to me, because I became like this leader in the community, in the church. And I remember there was a few people that would, argue with me, and they would do certain things, and I would hold back my tongue. I would just let it go, let it go, let it go. And my wife was like, why do you do that? Why do you allow for that to happen? People just walking over you. You're at your job, you're at your, wherever you are, is walking over you. And I told her on one occasion, because as you all know, I told you about my blackout concerns.
Yeah.
Is that when I know that I can take a whole lot, I didn't realize that was a strength until later on in life. I know that I can take a whole lot, but I also know that when I get to the point where I'm unable to take it anymore, that I may not remember what I do for the next few minutes.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, somebody else is telling me, hey, this is what you did. And that's the reason why you are in the place that you are. And so I had, I'm protecting myself. And I would never forget, I told her, I said, it's not that I'm allowing people, it's not that they are taking advantage of me. It's that I allowed them to do that because I'm unsure of what I will do in response. Right. Because I don't know how to use that smooth stone. I have no clue. I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And it was in that admittance, that open admittance, because before she had asked me that, I never knew. But when I opened up my mouth and said, I don't know, it's funny how now some people would say it's funny how the universe works. It's funny how God works, because all of a sudden I started it was like downloading. And I was things just started just downloading inside of me on exactly how I needed to speak, how I needed to frame myself, how I need to stand up, when I need to speak, the tone, my variations, everything came, and it didn't come as in like a manual. It just showed up. And all of a sudden I find myself standing in front of someone, and my uncle, he came to me. My uncle was standing here, a lady was standing here, and I was standing there, and she walked right up to me in front of my uncle, and she just went pop, 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 pop. And let me give you a visual. It was like she had an axe, and she just came to my knees, and she was just cutting me down, chopping into my legs, going all at it. And I turned and I spoke to her, and I said, have I ever spoken to you like this before? And I took a breath and waited. And she just shut down. I would never disrespect you in such a way.
Mm-hmm.
And she had nothing to say. And then I said, as for what you asked me, this, that, and the other. I hope that helps. And she walked away. And my uncle looked at me and he said, I ain't never seen something like that before.
I got to give you credit and merit for that. I totally understand what you're saying, and it takes something. So in that moment, is that when you said aha? Like I figure like I've kind of I want to say gotten there, because like you mentioned earlier, like you're always learning, you're always growing, and definitely don't tempt. don't tempt it, because just when you think you got it, all of a sudden something. So
that God's still there, Mike. He's still there.
You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden you're like, I think I don't. You got to be humble, because you might find yourself in a position where you're like, oh man, I thought I escaped this beast for 10 years, and And there it is. It's welling up inside of you. However, um, you do start to build up that a tolerance, so to speak, and understanding that everything, like for me, definitely is like you don't need to say everything. And in that, and I love the example that you gave, because there was a point in time where it was the same thing, because I used to say what just used to come to my mouth. You know what I mean? And even 10 years ago, that probably was the case when we first met. I'm sure he used to be like, matter of fact, you said it one time. You said the brother said something about guile. I think that's what you said. And so it's like I was gonna tell you my truth, and that's the way I saw it. And hey, I might go back and think about it later. And that's one thing about me too, is that I'll go back and think about it and come back and say, you know what? I gave it some thought. Now it might be 2 weeks later. It might be 2 months later, but I will come back and correct it, not to be self-righteous in any way, but that's just the way that I am, right? Having to be able to think things through. But there was a time when I said, you know what? You don't need to do that. Like that, that's not effective communication, because no matter how right that you may be, if you don't communicate it correctly, and that's what I love about you, brother, because the brother knows how to communicate things to people. If you don't communicate it correctly, it doesn't matter. It's not going to be received, right? So there was a long period of time, and still working on it. So Lord, I'm not tempting or testing anybody in regards to it, but there was a long period in time when it was just like I just wouldn't say anything. So I wouldn't say anything, and because I noticed at certain times that certain people that I knew and I loved and I wanted the best for, I just felt at that time I didn't know how to necessarily communicate it, and I seen some of these people go down a certain path, and then it was like, man, but you may have prevented if you could say something. But one of the things I do, but I need to learn how to say it. And so here's a quick plug for Toastmasters. That's one of the biggest reasons why I joined Toastmasters, was so that I could communicate more effectively. Because what happened when I wasn't communicating was like that energy of not speaking out, because when you speak out, oftentimes that's a release of energy, right? So but what happened is it would just get welled up. And I said, okay, this is just, after 6 months, a year of it being welled up, I said, I need to figure out some ways how to get this thing, because I know, because now I'm getting angry for no reason. Like it just be how do I do this better? One of the things definitely was Toastmasters. Quick plug, guys, if you are not a part of a Toastmasters group, you want to learn how to speak more effectively, and even more so to listen more effectively. A lot of people think Toastmasters is about learning how to speak in public, when in fact it's more so about communication, and which a huge part of communication is listening. And the second thing was definitely being able to meditation. It was meditation as well. So those things helped me. But just speaking to your point, was this way of being, because that's what I thought it was supposed to be. Hey, you speak the truth. You know what I mean? No matter what, even if it cuts hard, you just got to say you got to say what's on your mind. But when you figure out that it's not effective, and that was a huge learning process, and still learning it. You know what I mean? Learning when to walk away, because what happened with you in that situation is a powerful moment. But I'm sure at that time you saw the growth, because you said your uncle looked at you and was like, I can't believe you let that happen. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. He was very proud of me.
Yeah.
Because he felt like most people would have just like fired off.
Yeah.
But I stayed so reserved, and I was just going to go right back into the conversation with them, because I don't know if it's that I didn't recognize what had happened. I mean, I was there, I was present, I was in the moment, but I didn't understand the implications that my response had on him, or had on her for that matter. All I know is that catastrophe was averted. And that was the whole purpose.
Yeah.
Avert the catastrophe and help the individual see beyond the problem, see beyond the carrier, and help the problem to be solved. And that was it. So if I could help the problem be solved, then the carrier would be able to walk away and be relieved,
Yeah.
because nobody wants to carry a burden or a problem. So if you can help them to solve it, then naturally, I think they should be happier. And it happened.
Yeah.
So, and I think that this is what comes down to going back to that word, the miseducation, is because like what you were just saying, zeal is actually one of my 5 stones. There came a time when I felt like the Lord was teaching me to go and write down my 5 stones, and I would give everybody that same task. Go
Yeah.
and figure out what you're
Talk about that. Talk about your 5 stones and how a person can go figure out what their 5 stones are.
Well, I mean, I tell you the truth, Mike. I only remember a couple of them now, because this was actually 9 years ago, 8 years ago when I started to write them down, and I just remember a few of them. But one of them is tenacity, another one is zeal, and I haven't slowed down and put the focus into figuring out what those last 3 were. I wrote them down somewhere, and I used to keep them in my car up above my visor, but the Lord had put me in this place where another one is patience. But the Lord He's just giving it to me right now. But He had put me in this place where I needed to know what they were, but I didn't even know what they were there for, how to use all of them. And I think that that's part of the miseducation. So I would encourage anybody and everybody to figure out what your attributes are, what your true attributes are, what your superpower is, so that you can learn how to utilize it, because it's given to you for a reason. We have these strengths that are inside of us, but the miseducation piece of it is that sometimes we learn the strength, but we don't learn how to use them or why we have them. And how and why are 2 competitive forces that are always battling for preeminence.
Yeah.
Why do I do something? Sometimes that gets put to the side because the individual doesn't care about the why. They just want to know how to do it so they can do it better and better. And so they build their how up so well that they can put together something, but they never know the reason why they are doing it. And so they have a lack of power and understanding. And then some people are so concerned about why. That's a huge thing, especially in coaching. Everybody wants to sit down and figure out your why. But then, the how is not there. So you go to a coach and they teach you the why, but you have no clue on now what to do with your why. You've got no understanding.
So you're not of the belief that, or maybe not of the belief, but in regards to once you figure out your why, the how will show up. Because if you're aware, and I'm just curious, especially in regards to your coaching, is if once you help someone figure out their why, it's almost like the saying, what is it? The teacher will when you're ready, the
student is ready, the master will appear.
The master will appear, right? So once you figure out what your why is, now all of a sudden things, the how will come to you. What do you think about that?
I don't think that the how always comes to people.
Okay.
Because it's not always how is not always inside of your bag.
Yeah.
It just isn't.
Yeah. Most people it's not. Yeah. They're not exposed to it, right?
Exactly. Just like the why is not always inside your bag. It's just not there. So one of the things that I do with people, Mike, if they don't understand it, and I like to at least dig into it first. And if they do understand it, then great, we'll move on to the next thing. But passion and purpose, they mean a whole lot. Why? Because passion is your why. Purpose leads to your how.
Yeah. And you know what? And even in that, and I love it, and how you digging in people. This is why you need a coach, you need a mentor, you need someone, with the gift of being able to dig in and kind of understand it. Because even with the why, or it's not the why, but the passion and the purpose, it's so interesting that a lot of people's passion and purpose, and I'm doing this because I don't necessarily think it's theirs. Because the tools aren't necessarily there, and it's just me looking from an outside view. But it's influenced by their surrounding.
Yeah.
Right. So you'll see someone.
Sometimes.
It can be influenced. I think it's a lot. I think a lot of people are headed in directions This is me. I stand back because I don't know how to communicate it effectively enough. But a lot of people head in certain directions just because that's what they're surrounded by. Like for a quick example, I used to run a sober living home. We halfway house kind of deal, and you notice that everyone that was in that, not everyone, a lot of people were saying when you ask them, so now they had time to think, they're getting sober, they have this, they're getting their lives put back together. Almost the majority of them want to become therapists. The majority of them want to become counselors. And when you look at when you look at some of their attributes, because that's one of the things I'm blessed with, is to be able to see a lot of people's talents. I'm like, well, your talent might be better used as, whatever. Let's say plumber. Let's just throw it out there. Like, man, this guy would be a great plumber. He's handy. He can do this, and this is where his talents could be used. But because of the influence of being surrounded by and maybe some great therapists, they're surrounded by these influential people. At the time, most people, when they're in that situation, they're being influenced by their therapists or people who are a little bit closer. They feel like they need to go off into that pathway. And then being in that environment, being in that industry for X amount of time, you'll see them go that way for a couple of years, and then they're back to something, they're doing something else. It's just a flip up. But because they can be influenced, like I can easily see someone being around you and here's the thing, people, you got to be careful. When people are living in their passion and purpose, it's easy for you to say, I could do what Joel does. You know what I mean? Because you make it look, easy. A person sits down with you and they're like, well, it was so easy for this brother to figure this out, not understanding that that's your gift, that I could do that. It's the same thing with real estate. People say, well, Mike talks about it like this. I could go into real estate, and they don't understand all the hard work that and the things that are done behind the scenes. And this happens a lot within real estate. It's a 90% turnover rate. You'll start to see them get into it, and they're like, wait a minute. So we're not just looking at $1 million houses every day. We're not just, seeing, putting together contracts all the time. Oh, yeah. You got to learn this. You understand? But because they see people who are attempting to who are mastering their craft, and they get easily influenced. And that's what I was saying in regards to that. So how do you dig a little bit deeper? And I know I don't want to give out all your secrets, but how do you dig a little bit deeper with these people and their whys in that regards, if you don't mind?
I think that's perfect, because what you're talking about is the equivalent of shallow swimming. And when people really think that the shallow water is deep and they can get into it, they start shallow diving and they hurt themselves. So discovering what your why is, what your how is, it really has to come out of the individual. It really does. And it has, and it's not just, because listen, what you're talking about is nature versus nurture, right? Developing an individual, a lot of it has to deal with the nature. It's the nature of the environment that people are surrounded by. It's real easy to see someone win the lottery, or even a ticket. You walk into a store and somebody wins $100 from buying a ticket. It's real easy to say, you know what? I don't really play the lotto, but go ahead and give me a ticket too.
Yeah.
It's real easy to see somebody pop open a energy drink and just get like this boost of energy and say, oh man, I'm tired. Let me go ahead and get an energy drink too. It does not mean that the same results are going to happen for that individual. So when you're out there and you're looking for coaches, mentors, et cetera, you got to keep that in mind, that everybody is not available to swim in the deep water. And everybody is not, and even if they are available to swim in the deep water, it doesn't mean that they can teach you how to swim in the deep water.
Yep.
So when it comes down to it, Mike, there is a conversation that goes on. There is a certain amount of passion that I'm looking for. There's certain questions that I'm asking that I really want to get into. And, that's one of my other things. I'm telling you, the Lord's just giving me all my stuff back. Like I need to be able to share it or something. But discernment is one of my 5 stones. Mm-hmm. And so these abilities, that they're innate abilities. So it's not like So I do things to help perfect them now because
Yeah.
I understand that these are things that are inside of me. And then I do things to help bring them to fruition.
Mhm.
I was going to say this to you earlier because zeal was one of the things. And I was going to say, sometimes what you just have to do is you have to allow that stone to fly. You got to be like David. And instead of holding it in the bag, you can't figure it out. Sometimes you just got to sling it. You
Yep.
just got to sling it, man. You just got to just let it fly and
Yep.
see what the results are, and then hone your skills around that, because it's going to come naturally to you. But in order for you to reach peak performance, you have to hone those skills. I talk about that book by Erickson, Erickson Anders, Peak Performance. You got to hone your skills. You don't become the best celloist, the best, whatever it is, by sitting at home and say, yeah, I'm good.
Yep.
You got to get out there and put in work.
Mhm.
You don't get to become an Olympian because you sat at home and every time the Olympics came up, you decided to dive in the water and swim your best. No, you got to put in work. That's how
Yep.
you become the best.
Yep.
Everybody is good at something,
Yeah.
but only masters take the time to
Yep.
master something.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Like I think last show we spoke about, I just finished watching the Last Dance with Michael Jordan. I'm not even a huge Michael Jordan fan, but we all have to agree that he was one of the greatest to ever play the game. And the amount of work that the brother put in, and why he developed those championships, because those guys were like, man, this guy, it's hard for us not to work out when this man is the best one on the team and he's still working. He's steadily working. I remember he went to Dean Smith. I think Dean Smith no, he was already retired, over at North Carolina. And he said, man, Michael was always, you know, Michael Jordan was always, he was talented when he got here, but he came to me, he said, I want to be the best person that you ever coached. And then he said that he said he came back to a couple weeks later. He said, oh my God, like, I don't think he left the gym. You know what I mean? So it gets to that point where, you can have all the talent in the world. You got to own that talent. You got to refine it. For us brothers, we talk about
Yeah,
using that gavel, and we're smoothing out the stone, and it gets
the
back to
rough
the stone.
edges.
Yeah. All right. Awesome.
And
People.
that's funny that you said that, because that's part of one of my programs, as far as it goes in digging into groundwork. That's funny that you said that. You use that because that's part of what I'm teaching people is about self-refinement. Self-refinement. Yeah.
Guys, I think the brother knows what he's doing.
Ah,
I think the brother knows
man.
what he's doing. Yeah. So I don't go to a lot of people for advice. No way, no how, no can be. And that's just my personality. But the brother, for 10 years strong, we've had conversations, and I can definitely vouch for him in regards to what he's doing. And I'm glad that he's even more so bringing those talents out. So awesome. I think it was time well spent.
Man, I've enjoyed you. And I can't let you get away without me giving you a compliment too, brother. Because honestly, man, you are one of the smartest, wisest men. You're like the business mogul. You are that guy. When I look at you, I'm like, this is what businessmen are. This is it right here. I see you as being a multi-millionaire. That's the way I see you. I
I'm
see you as
receiving.
being multi-millionaire, tens, hundreds of millions. I see that in you. I see you giving back to the community. I see you being on talk shows and things like that with your hat on and sitting back, with a nice, Armani suit on or something like that, because Armani is not really that expensive for you in those days, and you're not really concerned about it, with some nice gaiters on and just looking really good, really fine, and just able to educate people straight up without holding back any punches, and people just being able to absorb what you have to say. And I see you still showing up inside of like gyms, like Wells, and coming out there and doing these little events where people aren't even paying you anything. They just want you to stop at. And you're like, of course I'll be there. I got to be there because the youth are our future. And I see you doing these types of events. And I'm just glad to be a part of this whole thing and watching you grow and develop. And I appreciate every single thing that you say and give to me in the form of this business thing, because, man, you're helping out a whole lot. I appreciate you as well, brother. 100%.
Thank you, brother. We can stand and give each other compliments all night, but we got to go.
We got to go.
We got to go. I appreciate everyone. Listen, people, we're still watching. You know, we go back. If you're typing something in here, we'll definitely engage with you. If you weren't able to catch it tonight, I know it's Good Friday. People are probably going to service, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, whenever you get a chance, check it out. This was definitely time well spent. Brother, how are we ending this tonight?
Yeah. All right. So, everyone, it's about the time for us to wrap it all up. And we just like to thank you all for watching. We definitely appreciate the participation. We appreciate the support and the community beacon. Remember, the community beacon is all about liberty. It's about the things that we're discussing and the things that we're teaching. It's all designed to help all listeners, as well as those of us, as well as us who are giving this information, to gain a more open and a freer mindset so that you can reach your highest potential, even as we, Mike and I, are looking to reach our highest potential. So listen, don't forget to turn to us again next week. All right. Remember that. Remember, our discussion this month is all about the younger self. And our next subject is going to be things we will pass on. So we want you all to be there. We hope to see you all there. Don't forget to like, love, subscribe, hit that notification button to remind you when we show up. I'm Joel Simmons. That's Mike Seville signing off, saying God bless. We'll see you next week. Love you. Peace.
Peace.